Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Philip Barbar, and along with being a graphic design and business student here at Wheaton College, I'm also the owner and operator of Five Coffee. Five is much more than just a number or a brand. It's a lifestyle. Our mission is to unite people all over the world with one common love: coffee. I'd like to start with a question before I get to my topic. How many of you have had a cup of coffee today? Okay, so a fair majority. Over 2.5 billion cups of coffee are consumed in the world today. Just an obscene number. Whether you personally drink coffee or not, the fact is that coffee is an integral part of our society today. Now, personally, I didn't always love coffee. In my earlier years, black coffee was just a dark, bitter transfer of caffeine. I just couldn't figure out why my dad loved his Starbucks venti dark roast and could enjoy it every morning. It didn't make sense. My cousins, Alan and Dave, two huge catalysts in my coffee conversion, we can call it, began to open my eyes with a cup of Turkish coffee, which is common in Middle Eastern tradition, and both of our families drank almost nightly. You know, to my surprise, I tasted a slight bitterness, or instead of the slight bitterness that I was expecting, I tasted notes of chocolate, just slightly. I thought, okay, I see where you're going. This could be nice on occasion. But they didn't drink this every day. Our family drank it. It was common in our culture. But they drank something else. They tasted all these bright and distinct flavors, like berry and graham cracker. Like, you guys are crazy. This is just a cup of coffee. How could these flavors be encapsulated in, such a simple beverage? I found out this was called specialty coffee. Well, that sounds nice and special. So I had to give it a shot. Expecting to taste it worse, the bitterness that I expected from, the Starbucks and Folgers of the world. And at best, the minimal chocolate taste that Turkish coffee offered. I was like, let's go for it. No. I took a sip, and I was just blown away, truly. I tasted what could only be described as bright, juicy, and fruitful flavors. How is this possible? Again, such a simple beverage, a coffee bean, and I was tasting flavors that berries and other substances produced. It just didn't make sense to me. I saw the importance of the roasting process through these two good friends and cousins. Companies like Starbucks and Folgers were burning their coffees, and this is what gave them their dark, roasty flavor and oily texture. So why did this have such an effect? I mean, it's just roasting. It's all got to be pretty similar. Where does this coffee come from that makes one different from the other? I knew I had to find the answers to these questions, and this ignited a vigorous flame inside of me. I had to know more about this interesting beverage that we call coffee. The more I dug into coffee, the more complex it became, and before I knew it, I'd entered into an entirely new world. And I wasn't sure which way to look next. There were so many paths, so many options, so many different coffees. My cousin and best friend Alan was a huge catalyst in the expansion of my coffee knowledge. There were countless nights that we spent going back and forth over the 10th pour-over we've made, trying to figure out the individual difference between one method and another, and how one coffee differs from another. I mean, what a leap from where I was just months before, not even understanding one part of this coffee business. His older brother Dave, my other cousin, is one of the specialty coffee pioneers in our family. I've learned an immense amount about this beautiful beverage from him. During his time at South Alabama University, Dave began reviewing coffees all over the country and posting about them on social media. Sweet. He had fun doing it. It was really just a pastime, and it got him free coffee. And always allowed him to push his knowledge and grow. So I thought, that's awesome, glad you're doing it. And then about 3 years later, as a high school senior, I found a piece of Dave's passion within myself. And being entrepreneurially minded, my next step was naturally to take his business model and replicate it. And I mean, who doesn't love getting free coffee? The idea loomed over me for a few months, but I was still missing one key component, my why. I drank coffee because it tasted good. And so do most people. That seems pretty logical, but I realized I had to find something different. I had to find a true passion if this is what I was going to do. Recommend coffees to people. One chilly Florida morning, I was sitting with my coffee in hand, pondering what the day ahead would hold. I couldn't help but appreciate the coffee's warmth that ran down to my heart. That feeling stuck with me throughout the day and throughout the weeks to come. And I realized I found my why. But how can I put that into words? Warmth? Okay. Cool. That would take a few more months. More blooming ideas, back to the drawing board. I knew that holding this warm mug and tasting its heartwarming contents were important to me. What about the other senses? I thought, I love the sounds, from the beans being ground, to the water being boiled, to the subtle noise of a pour-over. From the simplistic ones to the more complex. I love the beauty of all the steps. So for those of you that are not aware, coffee is actually grown as a cherry. And then it's processed, and through later steps that I'll mention, to what we know as this beverage. It was just such a beautiful process. And then finally, I could never get enough of the smell. So, what a combo that these 5 senses made. Wait, that's it, 5! 5 Coffee was born, and our mission was drafted, stating good coffee is more than just the best part of your morning. It's the uniting of all 5 senses to create something special. Because of my study of coffee, many people ask me, what's the favorite coffee I ever had? Now, being a broad question, I can confidently say to this day that one of my favorite companies at a local supplier of coffee, Counterculture Coffee, their Ethiopia Banco Gatiti was the most incredible burst of flavor that's ever entered my mouth. This might sound insane, and I know I'm getting these looks, but bear with me. On December 31st, 2016, I finally saw what Dave and Alan were raving about. I felt like I was drinking a blueberry pie, and I know it sounds crazy, because I told myself I was crazy. But sure enough, it was incredible to share this experience with the great men that led me into this coffee world. All this was great, but it boiled down to what I first noticed my dad in his Starbucks. Just a great experience. Coffee's about experience. And 5 has taken me to places and put me in touch with people that I never would have otherwise crossed paths with. What a blessing that is. It's also drawn me into discussions like this one. So getting to my topic of direct trade coffee, I thought, well, why is the experience limited only to the consumer? Should it not also stretch to the shop owner, then back to the roaster, then the producer, and then the farmer? This is a multi-step process, so why isn't it a multi-step experience? So I did some digging. To strip it down to the core, we have to start with farmers and producers. They're the people that give us the beans we see today. To put it in business senses, it's almost guaranteed that someone who loves what they do and is paid a fair wage will do a better job than someone who does not enjoy their job or isn't paid fairly. This logic, I believe, can be applied to coffee farmers and producers. Since our coffee comes from all over the world, spanning from South American countries up to Colombia, across to African countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and many others. There are hundreds of thousands of farmers and producers struggling to create the best product they can and produce the highest profit. In many circumstances, it's not just about this higher income that they're making. Instead, it's providing simple things for their family, putting food on the table, sending their children to school. Sadly, that's the reality of this business. Coffee, like many other plants, is a seasonal growth, seasonal harvesting season. So these producers really have to make this season count and produce their best product. However, as the geniuses and the coffee geniuses and owners at Cat and Cloud Coffee, Jared Truby and Chris Baca, pioneers of coffee, specialty coffee on the West Coast, discuss on their podcast, so many farmers just don't know what their coffee tastes like. You know, they farm it as green coffee beans, it's sent to the producer, and they never see it again. But over in America or over in a different country, their coffee's bagged, roasted, bagged, and sold. And they never get to experience that last part of the process. I believe that's something that we can start to incorporate, and many roasters have. So to get technical for a minute, the consumer market, or C market as it's called, determines the price floor for coffee purchases. Using this as the standard for buying coffee is preferred because obviously lower prices result in lower total costs, lower prices for the consumer, and more profit for the buyer. What's not to love? However, it results in less income for the farmers and producers. Direct trade cuts out that middleman and raises prices to achieve a more sustainable overall process. I'm assuming all of you who raised your hand about coffee would like to see this beverage carried on in the future. So sustainability is key. The most common certification seen in the direct trade process is called fair trade. And in the words of Truby and Baca, fair trade is the first best step. It's not the solution, and we have a long way to go, but it is currently the best step. It couldn't have been said any better. I mean, fair trade does raise the price above the C market by approximately 40 cents, but it has flaws that leave it as just a stepping stone for the future. One of the biggest problems in the fair trade debate is the consumer. If I may enlist the audience again. How many of you feel that the coffee you buy from your local shop is too expensive? You're the problem. No, I'm just kidding. Well, sort of. We have this notion that coffee should be dirt cheap. A high quality beverage and low prices. I mean, that just is our thought process as most Americans. But these low prices lead to lower quality coffee. Lower quality coffee is less happy consumers. So to take you back to this process that I mentioned earlier, each individual coffee cherry, which encases one coffee bean, is picked, sorted to get out the dregs, processed through one of three ways: washed, honey, or natural, depending on when the cherry is removed from the bean in the drying process. Sold, farmer to consumer, sold, or farmer to producer, then producer to roaster. Roasted, bagged, and finally made for the consumer. So this coffee has been looming for quite some time in probably various different countries before it even gets to your cup. And you're telling me that's not even worth your $3? I mean, come on. Sounds like a steal to me. I believe that fair trade is the first step to incorporating these farmers and producers into the wonderful experience that is the coffee process, truly allowing them to experience the glory of their coffee with all 5 of their senses. All in all, I believe coffee is so much more than a roasty, bitter caffeine transfer that I saw when I was younger. It's an experience that manifests itself in many different ways based upon your relationships, quiet time, and location. And not to mention, one incredible beverage. So I'd love to discuss steps we can take to further fair trade and raise its ceiling, but that's something for another time. Enjoy your coffee and drink deeply. Thank you.